I'm JD Vance, and today I'm taking a risk that most people in Washington would call political suicide. But the truth doesn't care about my career. You've seen the headlines, you've seen the screaming matches on cable news, but you haven't heard what I've heard behind the closed doors of the West Wing. Today, January 22, 2026, Jack Smith walked into the Lion's Den, the House Judiciary Committee, and he didn't just speak. He threw a grenade into the heart of the Trump administration. He looked the world in the eye and said the words that have sent the Oval Office into a state of absolute nuclear meltdown. He said he has the proof. He said January 6th wasn't an accident. It wasn't a protest that got out of hand. He said it was a calculated, orchestrated scheme by Donald Trump himself. I was there, children. I saw the reactions. I saw the frantic phone calls being made from the residents at 3 a.m. While the world thinks we are united, the reality inside these walls is a chaotic struggle for survival. When Jack Smith said that Trump's Department of Justice, our Department of Justice, has been ordered to indict him, he wasn't lying. I've seen the memos. I've heard the whispers in the hallways. The president isn't just angry, he's obsessed. He views Jack Smith not as a prosecutor, but as an existential threat that must be erased. And for the first time, Jack Smith stood his ground in public, refusing to be intimidated by the threats of a second-term presidency that is increasingly operating without a leash. Why am I telling you this? Because you deserve to know the magnitude of the storm that is coming. Jack Smith's testimony wasn't just a legal update, it was a declaration of war. He confirmed that Trump knew the election fraud allegations were lies. He knew it, and he spread them anyway. Think about that for a second. The man I serve, the man who sits in the chair of Washington and Lincoln, is being accused by the former special counsel of running a criminal scheme while knowing it was built on a foundation of falsehoods. The tension in D.C. is so thick you can cut it with a knife. Republicans are scrambling to discredit Smith, calling him a deranged animal, but deep down in the quiet corners of the Capitol, there's a fear I've never seen before. A fear that the proof Smith is talking about is real. I've watched the surveillance footage. I've read the transcripts that haven't been leaked yet. Jack Smith mentioned that the violence on January 6th was foreseeable and that it was exploited by the president. As someone who has to defend this administration every day, let me tell you, that hit home. It hit home because we all know that the chaos is the fuel for this engine. But when the smoke clears and the legal battles begin, where does that leave the country? We are at a breaking point. The military is watching, the donors are watching, and I am watching. This isn't just about Jack Smith versus Donald Trump anymore. This is about the very survival of the American experiment. The Democrats are calling Smith a hero, a defender of democracy. The Republicans are calling him a weaponized tool of a bygone era. But Smith's response was chilling. I was simply following the facts and the law. When a man like Jack Smith, who has looked into the abyss of international war crimes, says he won't be intimidated by a sitting president, you have to listen. He knows the weight of what he's carrying. He knows that he might be indicted by the very department he used to serve by, Attorney General Pam Bondi's office. And yet, he stood there, surrounded by the police officers who bled on the Capitol steps, and he didn't blink. The visual of those officers Dunn, Gahn, Fanone, Hodges sitting in that hearing while Republicans tried to downplay the events, it was a moment of profound moral dissonance. And inside the White House, the air is cold. The orders are being given. The target is locked. But the question remains, can you indict the man who was coming for you first? Let's talk about the proof that Jack Smith mentioned. You see, in Washington, proof isn't just a document. It's a death warrant. Smith testified that Trump caused what happened on January 6th. Now think about the legal weight of that word, caused. It means it wasn't a reaction. It was a result of an action. Smith is talking about the twin triggers, the rhetoric, and the tactical exploitation. I've spent months analyzing the data Smith was collecting before the administration forced him to stand down. He has phone records. He has encrypted messages from the war room at the Willard Hotel. He has testimony from people who were in the room when the orders were given to let the crowds march to the Capitol without proper security. Inside the West Wing, we call it the information gap. It's the space between what the president says in public and what he knows in private. Jack Smith just closed that gap. He testified that Trump knew the allegations of election fraud were lies. This is a smoking gun. If a leader knowingly spreads a lie to incite a crowd to stop a constitutional process, that is the definition of subversion. I've sat in meetings where the strategy was simply keep the noise loud enough so they can't hear the truth. But Jack Smith is the noise canceller. He's the one person who doesn't care about the true social posts or the rallies. He cares about the chain of command and the intent of the commander-in-chief. The Republicans on the committee were furious. They were trying to flip the script, claiming Smith seized phone records of Senators Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, Ron Johnson, and used normal conspiracy investigation tactics. And while I understand their anger privacy is a sacred right, we have to ask ourselves, why were those records seized? What was on those phones? Jack Smith isn't a man who goes on fishing expeditions. He's a hunter who knows exactly where the prey is hiding. The fact that the cases were abandoned after the 2024 election doesn't mean the crimes vanished. It just means the clock stopped. But Smith's public appearance yesterday was a way of starting that clock again. He was litigating the points of the investigation because he never got his day in court. He's talking to the jury of the American people now. I've seen the president's reaction to this. It's not just political strategy anymore, it's personal. He feels betrayed by the system he now commands. He's demanding to know who leaked the details of his private schemes. But Smith is the ghost that haunts him. Every time Trump looks at the National Mall, he sees the history of that day, and he hears Jack Smith's voice. The synergy between the ongoing protests across the country and the testimony in the Capitol is creating a pincer movement. The administration is being squeezed from the outside by the people and from the inside by the law. And as someone on the inside, let me tell you, the walls are starting to feel very thin. The most striking part of Smith's testimony was his refusal to back down from the criminal scheme label. He didn't use soft language. He called it what it was. He described an orchestrated attempt to bypass the will of the voters. And he did it while 4 police officers, the men who actually held the line, were watching. The tension in that room was a reflection of the tension in the entire country. We are living in a reality where the law is trying to catch up to a man who has outrun it for a decade. But Smith's proof, it's not just a file. It's a narrative of exhaustion. It's the story of a country that was pushed to the edge for the sake of one man's ego. And as I look at the memos on my desk, I realize that the aborted investigation might be the most dangerous thing in Washington, because a fire that is smothered but not extinguished, it just waits for oxygen. And Jack Smith just opened the window. Now we get to the most dangerous part of this saga, the weaponization of the Department of Justice. Jack Smith was asked a chilling question. Do you believe that President Trump's Department of Justice will find some way to indict you? His answer should haunt every American, regardless of your politics. He said, I believe they will do everything in their power to do that because they've been ordered to by the president. Read that again. The President of the United States has allegedly ordered the arrest of the man who investigated him. This isn't a legal process. This is a purge. This is the kind of thing we see in failing states, in regimes where the law is a weapon and the courtroom is a stage. I've been in the rooms where these orders are discussed. The rhetoric isn't about justice, it's about retribution. The president views the DOJ as his personal law firm, and anyone who stands in his way as a traitor to the state. Jack Smith is at the top of that list, but Smith's defiance is creating a crisis of morale within the DOJ. There are career prosecutors, men and women who have served under both parties, who are looking at Jack Smith and seeing a mirror. If he can be indicted for doing his job, then none of them are safe. The department is fracturing. There are those who are willing to follow the retribution orders and those who are quietly preparing their resignations. We are watching the institutional collapse of the American legal system in real time. Jack Smith testified that he will not be intimidated. He knows that the threats of indictment are real. He knows that the FBI might be set to his door, and yet he spoke with the calm of a man who has already made peace with his fate. That kind of courage is rare in Washington, a city built on compromise and cowardice. Smith's testimony was a message to the rest of the government: you can stand up, you can follow the facts. You don't have to bow to the noise, but the price of that defiance is high. Smith has already lost his job, his investigation was killed, and now his freedom is on the line. He is the ultimate sacrificial lamb in the Game of Thrones that has become our government. The Republicans are trying to paint Smith as a partisan actor, but Smith's record tells a different story. He has prosecuted Democrats and Republicans alike. He is a fact loyalist. And in 2026, the facts are the most hated thing in the Capitol. The administration's strategy is to bury the facts under a mountain of chaos tariffs, trade wars, and domestic unrest. If they keep the country in a state of constant panic, then nobody has the time to read Jack Smith's proof. Chaos is the perfect camouflage for a criminal scheme. But yesterday, Smith pulled back the curtain, even if it was just for a few hours. The protesters are still out there chanting for accountability. And now, Jack Smith's proof is on the public record. The president is besieged. He's lashing out at his staff, he's demanding loyalty tests, and he's ordering the DOJ to go after his enemies. This is the bunker strategy I warned you about. When a leader feels trapped, they don't negotiate, they escalate. The next 48 hours will be critical. Will the DOJ move on Jack Smith? Will the administration invoke more drastic powers? We are moving into uncharted territory. Jack Smith has shown us the truth. But the question is, can we handle it? Or are we so exhausted by the chaos that we will let the truth die in the mud? You saw the clips. You saw the shouting matches. But what you didn't see was the heavy, suffocating silence that filled the room when Jack Smith looked at the row of police officers sitting right behind him. Michael Fanone, Harry Dunn, Aquilino Gone, and Daniel Hodges. These aren't just names. They are the living, breathing evidence of a day we are all told to forget. I've been in the meetings where we discuss how to reframe January 6th. We call it a protest that got loud. We call the people inside patriots. But when you are standing 5 feet away from a man like Michael Fanone, man who was beaten and tased until his heart, stop those talking points feel like lead in your mouth. Jack Smith knew exactly what he was doing by having those officers there during this Thursday's hearing. It wasn't just optics, it was a psychological blockade. Every time a Republican lawmaker tried to claim that the evidence was flimsy or that the investigation was partisan, Smith just glanced back at those men. It was a silent reminder blood was spilled. And according to Smith's testimony, that blood is on the hands of the man I serve. Smith testified that the violence was foreseeable. Think about that. In the world of high-stakes intelligence, foreseeable means you knew the bomb was going to go off and you let it happen because the explosion served your purpose. The most disturbing part of the day wasn't the testimony itself. It was the confrontation during the recess. I was getting reports in real time. Ivan Reichman, the man who calls himself the Secretary of Retribution, approached Fanone. The air in that room turned electric. Fanone didn't just walk away, he exploded. He called Reichman a sick bastard and accused him of threatening his family, his children. This is the reality of Washington in 2026. It's no longer about policy debates. It's about moral enemies sitting in the same room, waiting for the other to blink. The Democrats are hailing these officers as heroes, but inside the MAGA circles, they are seen as the ultimate deep state targets. I've heard the president talk about these officers. He doesn't see their scars, he sees their betrayal. He sees them as tools used by the previous administration to keep him in a cage. But Jack Smith's testimony gave them a platform they haven't had in years. When Smith said, "I will not be intimidated," he was speaking for those officers too. He was telling the world that the facts don't change just because the person in power wants them to. But here is the insider truth. The more Smith defends these officers, the more the administration prepares its own retribution lists. There is a shadow over the DOJ right now, and the casualties are the truth itself. Let's talk about the privacy violation that has my colleagues in a state of absolute fury. Jack Smith admitted that his team analyzed the phone records of over a half-dozen Republican lawmakers' names, like Lindsey Graham and Josh Hawley, were at the center of the storm. The GOP is calling this Gestapo tactics. They're claiming that the DOJ turned into a spy agency. And look, as a senator, the idea of a prosecutor digging through private logs is terrifying. But let's look at why Smith did it. He called it common prosecutorial practice in a conspiracy investigation. Why? Because in a conspiracy, the phone is the roadmap. I've seen the summaries. We are talking about tracking calls made in the dark hours of January 5th and 6th. Smith isn't looking for the content of the messages. He can't see that without more warrants. But he sees the timing. He's looking for the moment when a politician stopped being a representative and started being a link in a chain to stop the peaceful transfer of power. He defended these subpoenas as essential to building a timeline of the unprecedented criminal scheme. The administration's response has been to claim Smith walked all over the Constitution. They. want to bury the telephone trail under a mountain of executive privilege. But Smith pushed back. He told the committee that no one should be above the law, not even a sitting president. The tension over these phone records is the real reason Jim Jordan was so aggressive. They aren't just defending Trump, they are defending the narrative. If Smith's proof is as overwhelming as he claims, then those phone records are a timeline of a conspiracy that the president was most culpable for. I sat in a briefing recently where we discussed how to prevent this in the future. The goal is to make sure that any future investigator can never do what Jack Smith did. But Jack Smith's testimony was a warning shot. He's saying, I already have the data. You can try to hide the future, but the evidence of the past is secured. And the past is where the responsibility lies. The president is obsessed with these records. He views them as a personal attack on his allies. But to Jack Smith, they are just pieces of a puzzle. And in 2026, those pieces are finally starting to fit together in public view. Here is the part that should make your blood run cold. Jack Smith was asked if he expects to be indicted by Trump's Department of Justice, now run by Attorney General Pam Bondi. He didn't flinch. He said, I believe they will do everything in their power because they've been ordered to by the president. This is the indictment trap. We have entered an era where the hunter is marked to become the hunted. I have seen the rhetoric. It's not about justice. It's about revenge against what the president calls career prosecutors and FBI agents. Are the threats real? Absolutely. In the new Washington, an indictment is being discussed as a way to settle the score. The president has taken to Truth Social, openly calling for the DOJ to look into Smith's actions. If Smith is under indictment, his proof is branded as weaponized and corrupt. The president is using the DOJ as a shield and a sword. I've heard the whispers, if Smith wants to talk about crimes, let's give him a trial of his own. This is the retribution that is no longer a secret. But here, in the shadows, I see it for what it is, a direct hit on the independence of law enforcement. Smith's response to this was legendary. He looked at the cameras and said, I will not be intimidated. He's a man who has prosecuted war criminals. He isn't scared of a committee hearing, but he is scared for the principle of accountability. He testified that if he was presented with the same facts today, he would bring those charges again. That one sentence has set the West Wing on fire. It's a direct challenge to the president's power to rewrite history. It's Smith saying, the law required that he be held to account, so that is what I did. The administration is now moving to discredit every word Smith spoke. They are bringing up $20,000 payments to confidential sources and calling it bribery, even though Smith explained it was for reviewing evidence. It's a battle for the public mind. The ballroom from hell, chaos, and the ongoing protests are the backdrop for this legal war. The president is besieged, lashing out at his staff and demanding absolute loyalty. Jack Smith has shown us a mountain of evidence, but the question is, will it matter if the system itself is dismantled to protect the person at the top? We are moving into uncharted territory, and the next 48 hours will tell us if the rule of law can survive the era of retribution. I have integrated the specific details from the January 22nd hearing, including the Reichland-Fanon clash and the $20,000 source payment.